The North Carolina State Board of Education is having an interesting conversation about the future of social studies standards in North Carolina's public schools. One person who is watching with interest is Dr. Terry Stoops. He is the director of the Center for Effective Education at the John Locke Foundation. Terry, remind us, why is this something that people ought to be paying attention to?
Well, North Carolina has been in the process of revising its social studies standards since April 2019, and there's been some controversy recently about a decision by the State Board of Education to ask the Department of Public Instruction, who helped devise the standards, to go back and make revisions to the standards to make it more explicitly conscious of marginalized groups, of slavery, of racism, and the various other types of struggles that marginalized groups faced in the United States. All of those things were included in the original draft of the standards, but they were asked to make it more explicit, and therefore the standards that they produced seemed a lot more ideologically charged than the ones that they had proposed last year.
Would it be safe to say much more anti-American or a much more negative assessment of American history?
Yeah, absolutely. And this really, the standards as they're written right now depicts U.S. history as a battle between the have and the have-nots, the powerful and the weak. And people who have objected to these standards, including myself, point out that there's more to the story than that. There are American ideals, constitutional ideals that make the United States experience special, especially in the history of the world, and those things are not being necessarily included in the standards as they've been rewritten. And so that's a lot of the controversy is, how do you balance the bad and the good? The parts of our history that we regret with the parts of our history that really represent triumphs in the history of our nation.
So this discussion hits the State Board of Education today. What stood out to you in their discussion about it?
Well, what stood out is the stark contrast between the two groups, those who are really strongly in support of these standards and those who oppose them. And there are two groups that really don't want to meet in the middle. And this is the really where the standards have gone, is that it's put people in corners, and it really is not probably going to lead to any sort of compromise between the two. And I fear that the standards as they're written now are going to be passed because the number of people on the State Board of Education that agree with the standards rewrite outnumber those that have disagreed with it, and therefore the standards look like they're going to pass at the beginning of February.
A major new player in this debate is our new Lieutenant Governor, Mark Robinson, in his first elected political post. He's playing an active role in this as a member of the state board. Yeah,
he's really a leader among the members of the state board that are opposed to these changes. And I think what the lieutenant governor recognizes is that these standards don't get us anywhere closer to giving the students any sense of civic literacy. We know that we have a civic literacy problem in the United States, that basically we are graduating individuals that don't know a whole lot about how our government works, about how their political system works, and therefore don't know when they go to vote what they're voting about and what those votes represent. And so the lieutenant governor has stood up and said, we need to ensure that we create standards that are attentive to the needs of students and the needs of our democratic republic. And he fears that the standards as they're written don't do that. Rather, they are meant to appease a certain ideological perspective, and it's one that he disagrees with.
You alluded to this, but this comes back before the State Board of Education in February. Is there anything that happens between now and then, or any steps that people who are interested in a more balanced assessment of American history and social studies can do to help address this situation?
At this point, probably not, unfortunately. It looks like these standards are going to pass. The purpose of this meeting was to talk about proposed changes from Superintendent of Public Instruction, Catherine Truitt, and it looks like her changes, which were very just slight changes to the standards as they were written, have passed. And so I don't expect a whole lot of discussion about these standards in February. My gut tells me that they're probably just going to vote on the standards with those changes from the superintendent incorporated, and that these standards will start to be implemented in the fall of 2021 to be fully implemented over the course of the next year. And parents may start seeing some of the residue of these standards in their child's classroom as early as the coming year. So we know that during the summer, the Department of Public Instruction is going to work on documents to provide teachers some more guidance about the standards. But unfortunately, I think we're beyond the point where the public can really influence the decision of the members of the State Board of Education.
One person who will be watching this situation closely and writing all about it at johnlocke.org is Dr. Terry Stoops, the director of the Center for Effective Education at the John Locke Foundation. Thank you, Terry.
Thank you.